shall and will. Two very, very important modules. Two modules that have worked together for the last 1500 years. Two modules that still have a bedrock to them that sort of keeps them somewhat somewhere still in their original places in the language, yet with the fact that will has become this sort of eye to the future, and shall's preterite form should is doing some very, very interesting things. These two modules are very, very, very important to English. Really, you could say they are part of the real bread of English. And they have been part of the bread for the last 1500 years. We do need a lot of videos to get into these. We do need to talk about these a lot. We'll get into a basic understanding of them today, but there is a lot to go over. And there is a lot to clear your mind of, a lot of misconception, of course. Now, you do have this idea of shall and will being what they are today in a lot of common constructions, but you still have a bedrock to them. Despite the preteritive should making its way as a present phenomenon, shall still has a firm grip, and shall still gives us various constructions. You still have some natural, very natural constructions with shall, giving us a firm grip in interrogatives, among other things. You hear it after or. Do you want me to sweep the floors, or shall I clean up the bedroom? You have a lot of these interrogative constructions where shall is still used. Should, the preterite form, still actually has the expected contrary to fact construction, still seen when we say, how should I know? Sometimes you do hear people say, how would I know? But often, how should I know? So you have this firm bedrock that these modules still have, despite the fact of various very strong forces that are happening to both shall and will, such as should becoming this present phenomenon, and will having this very strong sense of just being an eye into the future. So we do have a lot to go over, but we are talking about the bedrock of them today. But we will take a look at the developments quite a bit. Now, thanks to many things, such as indirect discourse, you have this phenomenon happening with should. It is actually quite interesting. Strangely enough, it's sort of bringing us full circle back to the original meaning of shall, meaning to owe in Old English. And this thing happening to should, this idea of it becoming a preteritive present is almost bringing us full circle. It's very interesting. We'll get into it a lot. Now, we can talk about will for a minute. You can talk about will, and you can talk about how it still is a cognate for the Latin velle. It had a meaning basically the same in Old English. Still, even in Jane Austen, though, you still hear characters say things hearkening us back, such as when Elizabeth said, she would go, meaning she wished to go. And just to bring us back to shall for a minute, you can still kind of sort of say that shall has a sense of owing when you say, I shall walk, I owe it to the future to walk. But both shall and will have, in their present forms, places in language where they look into the future. And we'll get into that, and we'll get into places in which they aren't really looking into the future. When you say, do as you will, there you're not looking into the future. Now, one thing is happening with modules that, well, happened quite a long time ago, before Jane Austen's time, after Shakespeare's time. You have this idea of splitting, in which a module has sort of shed itself of one of its places in the language. This shedding leaves us with a weak verb, such as the weak verb will, willed, willed. There is, of course, still associated nouns that harken us back to the original meaning. The noun will, I leave my will to my children, and the word willpower. So you have all kinds of pieces of bedrock that keep us grounded. And we'll get into it quite a bit. So in the Middle Ages, will had to do with just volition. It's more complicated, but we'll get to it. But now, today, we have things like talking to her and then going home is all that will happen to me today. Well, how can all of that, talking to her and blah blah blah, how can all of that, which is the subject of is, have willpower? Well, the truth is, the seeds of this have been germinating for over 1,000 years. Still, we have things like do as you will, maintaining that ancient bedrock. There was actually a weakening of the contrary to fact constructions in the Middle Ages, using would and should, outcompeting the use of the subjunctive past of the verb whose action was the actual subject. And we'll get into that in another video. Right now, we're going to look at the classical roles of shall and will. So, the classical roles of will. We talk about will, and we're going to talk about will in the Elizabethan language. We're going to conjugate and get used to conjugating will, willed, will, would, wouldst, would. And I'm going to pronounce it as best as I see fit in Shakespeare's pronunciation, or rather what I call the assumed pronunciation, which I'll get into in some other video. Anyways, and take a look at the classical roles of shall and will, which I consider to be the roles mostly conforming to Shakespeare's shall and will, but with some loosening of things. This is the shall and will of someone more like Bean, an amazing author who gave us one of the first novels written by a woman. We are, of course, going to talk about modules in Elizabethan language for a while. We're going to get to know them pretty well. I'm going to conjugate in them and get to know them very, very naturally. Eventually we will get to modern English. That's going to take us a while. Lesson 337. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but it's going to take us a while. So, now we're going to really get into it. The classic roles of shall and will. So, under the classic roles of shall and will, if I say, I will help you, then I'm stating my intention. It's my will to help you. That's my volition. It's my intention. These are the classic roles of shall and will. Saying, I shall help you is, or would have been, seen as, well, maybe I want to or not. I'm not going to give you that information, but yeah, it's going to happen. Now, the thing is, you talk about this construction, there is actually a feeling of owing still in there. Normally in the first person it mostly means it's going to happen, though that could be seen as meaning I owe to the future. Still, I shall help you can be more than just I owe to the future, and almost still have the force of I owe to help you, which doesn't actually really make the first person seem very nice to the second person. The second person actually kind of feels like, well, you don't actually really like me, you're just kind of doing this out of obligation. But anyways, today we see a use of shall in this sort of way after someone makes a suggestion. Check out this band, and I say, okay, I shall. You have that construction here and there, which kind of is similar to what we're talking about. Really, though, not only are shall and will not emphatic counterparts of each other, they are, in fact, well, shall, in fact, in the first person can be sort of emphatic, for lack of a better term, itself. Now, the second person address is quite emphatic. Notice I am really just humoring this term emphatic. It is quite emphatic in that it very much says, you owe to do this. We'll talk about that more in the next video.